y'all, I'm Hope here at Crafty Hope. Welcome! It is week 3 of the Seek, Gather, Create Mixed Media Scavenger Hunt Challenge. This is a challenge that comes from 4 hostesses, Lisa, Tina, Laura, and this time around guest hostess Casey. I will have all of their Instagram links for you below, and along with the Seek, Gather, Create Instagram handle, site, whatever, profile below, so you can go check them out. This challenge does take place on Instagram and happens about twice a year, usually the end of winter and the end of summer. And basically each week for a month they issue 4 prompts, and those are meant to inspire you to seek, gather, and create with them. So, like I said, this is week 3. The 4 prompts are bubbles, ruffles, and eye, and the color fuchsia. So, let me tell you what I've got going on here, and things could change. This is what I have sought and gathered so far. So for bubbles, what did I gather? Oh, yes, I have, these are glass pebbles that I pick up at like Dollar Tree or wherever that you can find most of them. They're flat backed crystals. I've got more of them. And to me, I call them glass bubbles or glass pebbles or whatever. But I thought that they would be perfect to represent bubbles. I might even go get some round ones I've got somewhere. I just haven't found them out. But you can also see I have a bubble wand. So this is, I actually had to go fish this out. I've got some catnip bubbles for my cats that I went and fished this out of. And my husband might 3D print me some more. We'll see. So these 2 things are what I've gathered for bubbles. Solid. Ruffles, I only have the 1 ruffle. So I immediately knew I wanted to create a ruffle on my sewing machine. So I've made this one. It is not great. There are parts of it that are just not ruffled at all. So I'll probably end up cutting this down. I did initially think I was going to maybe use this fabric to create my ruffle because it has that fuchsia color in it, but I decided it's just not long enough, that maybe I wouldn't get enough of the fuchsia and I needed something really long. But then I thought of some of my eco dyed fabrics and ended up pulling out this one. You can just barely see the eco print on it. And it's super long. So that's why I decided to go with that fabric. I can't tell you what the fabric actually is because I don't know. I am no good with that. But that was my ruffle that I just created by folding the fabric as it went through my sewing machine. So that's my ruffle. I will see. And like I said, I wanted it really long because I feel like I want it to frame up this box in the end. Like, yeah. So that is bubble and eye. Okay, y'all. I, for years, have been cutting eyes out of magazines. It's one of those things that I, just cut out. So I have this envelope marked eyes for me to pull from. I also have I may laser cut one. We'll see. I've got one designed in my laser and Lightburn, which is my laser cut program. And I might go cut one out. But for now, I've got these magazine cutout eyes. And then fuchsia. The only fuchsia I think I have is this royal fuchsia. It is an Anita's acrylic paint. I'm sure I could find some other pink fuchsia-ish color somewhere. But for now, this is what I have. This is what I've sought and gathered. Now it's time to create. So if you've seen my previous 2, I will direct you up here to the first one. I decided for this season to use boxes and work on a panel that fits in that box. So this one's kind of small for this box, which is fine. It gives it some, I might even collage something in the background so that that's even more stands out. This box is from Dollar Tree. It has these little label things. I may take those out and Yeah, I'm trying to decide. I might take these out because I don't really need them and I can use them in something else. But I'll work on this panel in this box. I hate the edges on this MDF that they use. So that's why I was thinking the Ruffles would go over it. Okay, I am talking too much. I think I want to spray paint this bubble blower gold. Just for the heck of it. That's how I'm feeling. I might gesso it first, but I don't know. I gotta go see what gold I have, what gold spray paint I have first. So I'm gonna get started on that. And spray paint with some Rust-Oleum metallic finish is exactly what I did, and let it dry for a few hours. And then I started taking off those labels off the sides. I had a hard time with this. I don't know. I kept stripping. I've got these tiny screwdrivers, and those are Phillips heads that I'm pressing and turning, and they are just not connecting. And I went to see if my husband had something smaller and couldn't find anything. So I ended up using one of the flat heads and actually turning the box as opposed, you can see that, and as opposed to the screws. And that worked so much better. And I got both of those labels out, put them in a little zippy container. And that's what I did. So later on, I'll come back with those. I'm not going to fill those holes or anything. When I position them later, I'm going to make sure they are the top and the bottom of this instead of, I don't know, for me, they seemed like the sides initially, but they're going to work up being the top and the bottom and something that's not really seen because when I sand them down, the holes kind of fill in themselves. It's odd, but that's what happened. All right, so I decided that what I wanted to do was paint the inside of my box with that fuchsia paint. I'm not big on pinks, and purples are kind of hard to work with sometimes. And I thought that this might just be a nice little touch that's kind of seen from different angles and gives this a bit of color, because the rest of it, I didn't realize at the time, is going to be pretty neutral colored. So I taped off, as you saw, took some masking tape and taped that top edge there, basically because I wanted to leave it raw for when I glue down that ruffle. I didn't want a barrier between my glue and my fabric. Oh, and I showed you there, I found that I had a set of Inktense pencils, and it's a fuchsia. And I'm not going to use it. I tried using it on something and I decided I just didn't like it. So I am, and this is really hard to see, I am so sorry. I am painting the inside. I'll show you here in a minute. The inside and just the outside edge of the back panel. So you'll see it here at the end. I've sped this up because really, y'all, it's just me painting. So, and I'm not going to show you, I did do 2 coats of it, and yeah, so what you'll get to see here is that just kind of that back on the back panel, just the outer edge that'll show around that panel I'm going to put in, and then those outside edges, or those inside edges, whatever you want to call that. I did put it aside to dry, and I remembered I had gone and found a couple of eye images and printed those out on some basic copy paper. I do have a a laser printer, so it uses toner instead of ink to print, and so since this was freshly cut out, it's going to work really nicely. And you can see I am cutting down this eye. I started to kind of fussy cut it a bit more, but I realized that was just annoying. So I'm getting as close as I can to the edge of the image because I don't need a whole lot of extra paper on this. Because what I'm going to do is an image transfer. And what I'm working on is it's fairly sturdy dictionary paper. And I want to push back some of the dictionary words and stuff. So I'm putting gesso down on it in a thin, what I was hoping was going to be a thin layer, y'all. I used way too much gesso, so I'm going ahead and just kind of covering it up, and then I'm going to scrape it up. Yeah, I'm going to use the scraping tool to scrape it back. Just putting it over on that piece of newsprint and then dry it. From there, I'm going to work on my image transfer. So what I'm using is some Liquitex matte gel medium, and I've got a paintbrush. I did not wet that paintbrush first, which I think I should have. It was very stiff trying to work on it. And I'm trying to get a nice thin but thorough layer on top of my eye here. I'm also trying to make sure I don't get it like on my fingers or on that back piece I'm putting there, because if any of that gets on the back, then I won't get a very good transfer. So you can see I'm trying to make sure this is a pretty even layer. And then I'm going to flip it over onto my dictionary paper and flatten it out. I'm trying to make sure my hands are clean, and again, I don't smear any kind of the medium on the back of it. So I've put that aside to dry and come back after I've done my second coat of that fuchsia in my box. I'm taking off the masking tape. Now, a little bit did seep under it. I'll try to wipe it up while it's still a little wet. It's okay. It's a tiny bit. I'm not super concerned. And it hit me that what I really wanted was a bit like of an oil slick coloring on the edge of this. You know how bubbles, when they float away, they've got that like rainbow effect in there. And I thought that I could use, this is some, what's it called? Dragonfly glaze. I think it's made by Folk Art that I'm putting in there. Now, this first coat I did not shake up very well. I will be putting a second coat on it off camera. And I didn't realize that it's more of a glitter than what I thought it was. So it's not exactly what I wanted. I really kind of wish I had the color shift stuff in maybe the fuchsia, and that probably would have been more what I wanted. But it's okay. You're not really ever, unless you're in exactly the right light, you're not going to see that glitter. So once my image was dry here, you can see I'm using some water. And y'all, this took a while to get layer after layer of that paper off. So I'm skipping ahead. And y'all, I just used some water and peeled and then dried it and then peeled again and then dried it and peeled. So I did 3 times. I even used a magic eraser to help me peel off those layers of paper to get this beautiful transfer on there. And I'm sealing it in with a bit of satin varnish from Arteza. And again, I'm going to let that dry. Then maybe I didn't cut it out. So here I shook up that Dragonfly glaze a little bit more and am coating it again. So, like I said, it's not going to show up in the pictures. In fact, the fuchsia doesn't show up very well in the pictures at the end anyway. It's one of those things that in the right light, you might see a little bit of that glitter sparkle, but it's not a huge deal. I just thought it might also give that bubble feel to this, because that's one of my favorite things about bubbles is that kind of oil slicky rainbow coloring to it. All right, now that my image transfer is dried and sealed, I am trying to size it up. This was excruciating here because I wanted it to be fairly even, and I'm gonna scooch it and move it and all of that. I feel like this isn't sped up. Oh my gosh, have I not sped this part up? I'm not sure. I have sped it up, but I must have been just very meticulous about this. So as you can see, I placed that panel and then I'm folding the paper just to kind of mark where I want to cut it. And so I'm going to take my scissors and then cut along those lines that I folded this to get the right size. And you see, I'm trying to double check that and everything. It's fine. If I didn't, I think when I glue this down, it's going to be off a hair on one side, but I don't think anybody but me is ever going to notice that. So, to stick my eyeball down, what I'm going to do first is take my panel and coat it in a layer of matte gel medium. This basically I'm doing to seal the wood because I know it's super porous, and if I just stick my paper on there, it's not going to be, I don't know, I feel like it would soak more into the wood than into the paper, so I'm going to give it yeah, I'm going to give it this layer and then dry it. Once it is dry, I'll start sticking my eyeball down. So I'm trying to rinse my brush off really good, even though I'm going to use it here again in a second. So once that is good and dry, I am going to put down just across the top portion a bit of the matte gel. What I really want to do is make sure I don't get any bubbles in my eye. So I'm going to put that on there, line it up as best I can, and flatten that down. Then I'm going, pick it up, put it down. And do y'all see what I'm doing with my brush? I'm sticking the end of my brush in my mouth to hold on to it while I'm working. Do y'all do that too? Do you use your mouth as a third hand? Because, yeah, that's totally, if you pay attention to my videos, you may notice it, but I do it all the time. It's probably no good. So I'm going to do this one, and you can see I'm working, putting a little bit down, flattening with my hands. I probably could have pulled out a tool to do this. I was real concerned. I was like, oh my gosh, do I have anything on my fingers? I might have more of that fuchsia paint on there. There I'm wiping off some of the gel medium that I cleaned off, because as I'm flattening this out, of course, I'm pressing out some of the gel medium from the edges. And then there is that last little bit. I'm going to give this a little bit of a chance to dry, just super quick. I don't even know if you're going to notice it because I clipped this. Yeah, there. And I've got my sanding block, and I am going to sand off any of the excess around the edges. This is, I don't know, if I wasn't so sure that I had glued that down, I might have been more concerned, and I really do wish I had given myself just a little bit more time to let it dry before I did this, because the paper being wet, it was softer, I suppose, and if I had waited until it dried more thoroughly, it wouldn't have been as, I guess, soft is the best word I can come up with for it. So yeah, I'm going to sand off that excess and then come back with some, with my ink blender in black soot. Yes, Distress Ink Black Soot. And just ink those edges super quick I don't know, it just felt like it needed that framing to finish off. And like I said, I had a hair off on one edge, and I felt like that would help cover that up. So I have a container there that I have pulled out that has like the waste material from my laser cutting, and I took a little piece there that I wanted to put behind my, what's that thing? My bubble wand, to elevate it just a little bit, because I didn't want to glue it to the image. I want it to kind of float above it. So I cut it down to about the size I needed and am sanding the edges just a little bit. And once I get them sanded, you can see I'm trying real hard. I don't want anything prickly or weird on there. So, and that hides it pretty well, but the edges where it had been laser cut, of course, are black from the burn of the laser. So I'm grabbing my, what's it called? Delta Cream Coat 14 karat gold paint, and I'm painting those black edges along with the edges on the top and the bottom. And when I mean the top and the bottom, I mean what's pointing. How do I explain it? I'm not painting the parts that I'm going to be gluing. How about that? I'm painting all the other parts except for what I'm going to be gluing, because like I said, I don't like a barrier between the glue and the surface. So I'm painting those edges with that gold, and that matches that bubble wand. I also did not spray paint the back of my bubble wand so that there's no barrier there as well. All right, so I've got my mini E6000, and I am putting it along that wood piece there and then sticking it right onto my bubble wand. I know this is super hard to see. I apologize, but it's pretty basic. Just gluing that down, sticking it. I am using my finger to remove any of that excess glue that's oozing out the edge. And then I'm taking a look at it to see how I feel about it lining up, and then clipping off some of that excess. Yeah, because I knew it wasn't going to fit in my box. I did, and I cut it out, but I fiddled with that for quite a while, deciding like how much I thought I was going to need to cut off. And it is going to hang off the bottom of the panel just a touch, but that gives me just enough to help space it when I put it in the box, so that I know that when that bottom touches the inside of the box, that's the spacing I want. All right, so I did paint the end of that bubble wand also gold to make sure that, just that for Pete's sake, nobody's ever going to see that, but it just made me feel better. And then more E6000 on the other side of that wood, pulling off any more of that excess I can. And then I'm going to stick that over my eye. Now this gets a little fiddly. I don't know why I turned it sideways, because I'm going to have to straighten it out here in a second. I turn it up and I realize, oh, that's not centered. And I'm trying to get it right over the pupil of the eye, like the very black center of the eye. And I think I did a pretty good job. I'm hoping you'll see that as well in the video. In the pictures I have at the end. From there, I start trying to figure out where these bubbles are going to go. I do wipe them off with a towel to kind of clean them. And y'all, it took me a while to fiddle and figure out where I wanted them, because I didn't want them to feel symmetrical in any way. I wanted them to feel like bubbles kind of floating up away from the bubble wand. So, and again, I'm using my E6000, putting just a dab on the back of these bubbles. I also thought about using glossy accents, but since the E6000 was already out, that's what I went for. And so, yep, a little dab on the back, kind of smushing them down into place, making sure that it's well coated on the back. And yeah, applying each of these bubbles on there. The one on the far right is actually going to come off of the panel just a scoosh, like it is floating away. And again, it's just enough to kind of help with the spacing when I put the panel back in the box. Yeah. From there, I was going to go ahead and start adding the panel, but I realized I never did deal with those holes. So I'm using that sanding block to sand the holes down. And you can see they kind of, I can see that they kind of filled in their flat. And I can always come back later and do something with those later if I feel like I need to, or cover the edges or whatever. But for now, I don't have a problem with leaving them as they are. It gives a little bit of extra character to that box. As in the past, in my other two videos, I am using these tumbling tower blocks from Dollar Tree to elevate the panel. In this case, I wanted it pretty elevated because the box itself is a lot deeper than the other boxes. So I am stacking 3 of these tower blocks together. So I'm starting by gluing 2 of them together, 4 sets of 2 of them together, and then I'll come back and add the additional 1. And I'm using wood glue. This is also Dollar Tree wood glue to get it. And as I do it, as I squeeze them to hold them together, I am wiping off that excess glue. I don't know why. It's not going to be seen. I just felt like for my own sake, I wanted that. So once I had the 4 done, you can see I'm coming back and adding the additional 1 on each of them. It doesn't take very long for this wood glue to dry, and it was a simple process. So I let those dry for a little bit and then went to my panel. I'm trying, because of all the stuff on the front of it is a little rocky, so I'm trying to level it out by putting things under it, so that when I add these to the back of it, they don't slide off before they get a chance to dry. And like I think the previous one, I'm adding one of the stacks to each side. I had my phone in my hand there. Sorry, I was
talking to somebody. Oh, I didn't even realize you could see it in the camera. How funny is that? I was talking to my friend Nina on Marco Polo so, while I was doing this because this just felt like busy work. So, and I'm going to leave this for just a little bit to dry. I don't have to leave it very long. Um, but what I decided to do is scooch it to the side here and focus on putting that ruffle on the front of the box. I am using Fabri-Tac glue as I am gluing fabric, and it's a pretty multi-purpose quick drying glue. So, and I am going to use this ruffle in one long strand to go all the way around. I'm not going to show you the whole thing because it's pretty straightforward that I am adding the glue, putting that down. I will be turning the corner. Maybe I do show you more of it than I thought I did. Maybe I do. Yeah, because the turning of the corners is kind of weird. I go almost to the corner and then make that turn. I did take my ruffle back to my sewing machine and add more folds in it in those places where it didn't get ruffled previously. It was bothering me that it didn't have all the ruffles. So I did go back and fix that, which means I've got like additional stitches on parts of it, but I kind of like that. This feels very rough, and I think it was kind of neat that some of the places had additional stitches because it continues that rough feel because there's a lot of fraying and aging on this fabric. All right, so you can see I am just working my way around, adding a little bit of Fabri-Tac, sticking that down, letting it dry, working my way. You can see right here at the corner, it's hard to tell, but I don't go all the way to that corner so that I can make that turn. And be a little more meticulous about it. Now, when I get to the end of this, I am going to make sure this last little bit overlaps just a tiny bit and then cut it. I will futz with, at the end of this, gluing that, making sure that that's all tacked together, but I think that ended up being, for some reason, I need to move my camera down. It's higher than I thought it was, and I kept working closer to myself, and it wasn't quite on camera. So I'm taking a look at that, making sure everything is how I like it. I think I am here. I'm going to tack a little bit of that down, and then go ahead and put some wood glue on the back of this. And you can see I kept the center back there open so that I can have wood to wood contact. And once I get this glued in, y'all, that is it for week 3 of Seek, Gather, Create. Once again, I encourage you to go check out Lisa, Tina, Laura, and Casey, and as well as anybody else. Use that hashtag Seek, Gather, Create August 2024 to see how everybody else has interpreted these prompts. I hope you like this. If you did, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and make sure you come back later and see what else I do. I've got more mixed media art as well as iCAD and Thrifty Thursdays and all of that stuff. So thanks for spending this time with me. I will see y'all later. Thanks for watching. Bye.